In San Francisco, America, there exists an island right in the middle of the sea, known as Alcatraz Island. Over time, this island had been used as a lighthouse, then a fort, and later as a military prison. But in 1934, it was transformed into a federal prison. Spread across 22 acres, this island is built on a massive rock in the middle of the ocean. That is why it is also called the Rock. From 1934 to 1963, some of the most notorious prisoners were kept in this prison. Criminals like Al Capone, George Kelly, Alvin Karpis, and Robert Stroud. To house the country's top criminals, this prison was designed in such a way that escaping from it was nearly impossible. On one side, the island was surrounded by the freezing waters of the Pacific Ocean and stormy waves, while on the other side, the prison itself was built to be extremely strong. Tough iron bars, high-tech security, 2 layers of 12-foot fences topped with barbed wire all around, guards stationed on towers 24 hours a day, and strict rules like 12 prisoner checks every single day. All of this made the prison even more unbreakable. Because of such tight surveillance and strength, this prison was nothing less than hell for inmates. Those who attempted to escape were either caught or killed, thanks to its ultimate maximum security. Alcatraz had earned the reputation of the inescapable prison and jail from which no one could ever break free. But the morning of June 12, 1962, brought with it news that completely shattered the prison's reputation and security. The world's strongest prison had been broken. Not one, but 3 prisoners managed to escape under the noses of the police in the dark of night. What was left behind were only their fake dummies lying in bed, mocking the failure of the authorities. Every inch of the prison was searched, the ocean around it was combed, but not a single trace of the fugitives could be found. Not just the police, but America's top-level agencies, the FBI, as the U.S. Marshals put, in their maximum efforts to track them down. But neither were the escapees' bodies ever found, nor were they caught alive. Even today, more than 60 years later, this prison break remains a mystery whose layers have never been fully uncovered. A high-security prison, an inmate's dream, there was only one belief: there was no way out. Yet with stones, spoons, dummy heads made of plaster and a raft stitched together, they carved their way to freedom.
Ow.
It appeared to be the first successful escape in the history of the maximum security prison. Brothers John and Clarence Anglin, along with Frank Morris, disappeared into the night and have never been found. Their escape triggered the greatest manhunt in San Francisco's history, as FBI agents, Coast Guard, Highway Patrol, sheriff's deputies, and local police all joined the search. What they found were 3 decoy heads lying in the beds. To this day, the Anglin family believes this. There is a photo of John and Clarence Anglin. It was taken at their home in Brazil in 1975. The story of history's most powerful prison break has 4 main characters. The first person is Alan West, who had been arrested more than 20 times on charges of theft and had spent years behind bars. Because of his repeated crimes and constant attempts to escape from prison, in 1957, he was transferred to Alcatraz. The second key character in this story was a cunning and shrewd criminal with an IQ of 133. His name was Frank Morris. At the age of 11, his parents abandoned him, and by the age of 13, he had stepped into the world of crime. Half of his youth was spent going in and out of prisons, yet his crimes never stopped. Once, after committing a major bank robbery, he was locked up in the Louisiana State Penitentiary. But this crafty criminal managed to escape from there as well, just as he had from several other prisons before. After being caught again in January 1960, he was sent to America's most dangerous prison, Alcatraz, to serve a 14-year sentence. The third and fourth characters of this story are John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. They were brothers who had started committing thefts and robberies at the young age of 14. Other than stealing, there was only one thing both brothers were truly skilled at: swimming. They were excellent swimmers. But their habit of stealing eventually landed them in Alcatraz. For their crime of robbing Columbia Savings Bank, John Anglin was imprisoned at the end of 1960 with a 15-year sentence, while Clarence Anglin was imprisoned at the beginning of 1961 with a 10-year sentence. Alan West, Frank Morris, and the Anglin brothers, these 4 prisoners, had 2 things in common. The first was that all of them were thieves. Second was that before coming to Alcatraz, in every prison they had been locked in, they had attempted multiple escapes. That is why they were sent to the stronghold of Alcatraz, a prison from which no one had ever escaped. But neither the prison officials nor those who proudly called Alcatraz the inescapable prison could have ever imagined that the prisoners were about to do something that no one before them had ever managed to do, and the pride and honor of Alcatraz would be stained forever. Because they all shared the same nature, it didn't take long for the 4 prisoners to become friends. Whether it was eating in the mess, taking part in an activity, or doing some duty-related work whenever they were outside their cells, they stayed close to each other, whispering in secret about escaping from Alcatraz, while avoiding everyone's eyes. In a way, the 4 of them were a perfect combination. Frank Morris was highly intelligent and could create a brilliant escape plan. Alan West, having been there for several years, could arrange the necessary tools and supplies for the escape. Over the course of 3 to 4 years, he had learned a lot about the structure of the prison and its loopholes. On the other hand, John and Clarence Anglin, being skilled swimmers, could think of a way to cross the ocean surrounding Alcatraz. But the problem they faced was that they were all imprisoned in different blocks. To carry out their plan, it was necessary for them to be in the same block, with their cells close to one another. Surprisingly, they also discovered that Block B was the only place where the ventilation shaft above was sealed with concrete. This meant that if there was any chance of escape, it could only happen from Block B. So very cleverly, they somehow convinced the prison staff, and all 4 prisoners were shifted to nearby cells in Block B. Their first target had been achieved, and now the 4 began to form their plan to escape. The ventilation shaft of Block B was weak and not sealed with concrete. If they could reach it, they could climb onto the roof and then escape from there. But the biggest question was how to reach the ventilation shaft. After much thought, they realized that the ventilation grate in their own cells could serve as a good way out. In fact, every prisoner's cell had a metal grill for ventilation, and behind it was a closed utility corridor filled with pipelines and heating ducts. Very few people ever came there. The passage behind the cells was rarely used, which is why it remained unguarded. And from there, they could reach the ventilation shaft leading to the roof. They made a plan. If somehow they could break the ventilation grates in their cells and dig out the surrounding area to widen the hole, they could escape through it into the corridor. After finalizing this plan, the 4 prisoners began digging into the strong, inch-thick concrete wall surrounding the ventilation grate. For this, they used metal spoons stolen from the kitchen, and to speed up the process, they even created a drill from a vacuum cleaner motor. The digging was carried out during the music hour every day. For 1 hour, loud music was played for the prisoners. This way, no one could hear the noise of their work. The job was done in turns. One of them would keep watch on the guards, while the others continued digging. This way, hidden from everyone's eyes, the digging went on. Days passed, weeks passed, and finally, after many months, each of the 4 had managed to make a large enough hole around the ventilation grate located beneath the sink in their cells. Now, they could easily crawl out into the closed corridor behind. To keep the holes hidden, they used musical instruments, large-sized objects, and fake ventilation grates made from cardboard, so that from outside, everything inside the cell looked normal. In a way, the tunnel was ready. And now, if they wanted, they could, on any night, crawl through it to the ventilation shaft, open it, climb onto the roof, and escape while avoiding the guards' eyes. But even if they managed to get out of Alcatraz this way, the dangerous sea still awaited them. The cold water and the stormy waves had been the reason all previous escapes had failed. So, the 4 of them decided to be patient and prepare what they needed to survive the water life jackets. A raft and paddles. I had to build all this. They decided to crawl out through the hole in the vent and through the corridor, set up a secret workshop above their cell block, where they could work in hiding. But the problem was that if they stayed outside their cells working, the guards patrolling would notice their absence and immediately suspect an escape attempt. So, to trick the guards, they made dummies using plaster, toilet paper, soap, and toothpaste.